Merci de vous joindre à nous, toute première assemblée publique de l'industrie bovine canadienne, et bienvenue à tous. My name is Michelle Mcmullan, and I am the Communications Manager at the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. Je m'appelle Michelle Mcmullan et je suis directrice des communications de l'Association canadienne des éleveurs de bovins. To open tonight's meeting, Bob Lowe, President of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, and Michelle Daig, Chair of the National Cattle Feeders Association, will provide short remarks. With that, I will turn the floor over to Bob and Michelle. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to my kitchen. I, along with our industry partners, would really like to welcome everyone, just to imitate what Michelle said, to the first ever Canadian Cattle Industry Virtual Town Hall. My name is Bob Lowe, and I'm currently the president of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. The world as we know it has been brought to its knees by the coronavirus. This has affected every segment of the population in every corner of the world, and the cattle industry in Canada is no exception. We at CCA are committed to keeping the beef industry informed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Comprehensive information and resources are available on CCA's website to help keep you updated with the best practices for your farm. We encourage everyone to review these resources and put the relevant best practices in place for your operation. Farmer ingenuity was really highlighted this spring by the seed stock industry, who managed to implement the rules for reduced crowd size and physical distancing and still managed to have successful bull sales. We all applaud you. We have set up what I'll call emergency response teams from across the industry to deal with this pandemic. We have worked on improvements to the business risk management suite, as well as some additional tools to have on the shelf if needed. We have been talking to other commodity groups and have aligned with them where it makes sense in our lobbying efforts. We have had numerous virtual meetings with a number of MPs and senators, one of which I would like to specifically recognize for his efforts on our behalf. Senator Rob Black has been a true ally to the cattle industry through this crisis. Please, Senator Black, please accept my thanks on behalf of the entire Canadian cattle industry. Another strategy that we have put into play is aligning with our provincial members in their lobbying efforts. Our main objective through all this is to ensure that the food chain continues with as little interruption as possible to keep grocery store shelves full and also maintain our international commitments. As incoming CCA president, my goal was to elevate the profile of Canada's ag sector. I do not want that to be because we have empty shelves in the grocery stores. Before passing the mic over to Michelle, I'd like to personally thank all of the frontline workers for their efforts to keep Canadians healthy, safe, and well-fed. These are challenging times, but I believe that agriculture has the potential to pull the country through this crisis and lead it into the future. And with that, Michelle, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Did you hear me?
Yes, we can, Michelle. Yes, we can, Michelle.
Okay, my name is Michelle Daig, Chair of National Cattle Feeder Association. I will echo Bob's sentiment in thanking our provincial and federal government for being active, supportive partner with the beef industry throughout this ordeal. They have been open to working with us and have already helped with results on timely issues like the temporary foreign worker program, and are working with us to ensure we have business risk option for all producers. As we work to ensure food security and safety, we have been focused on collaboration within our industry. As evidenced by calls like this, we have been working closely with CCA and other national and provincial organizations to present a united front and be efficient in our work with government on behalf of all our members. Together, we continue to work on issues from labor to trade to pricing and everything in between. As we collaborate, we are able to streamline the issues of our industry and ensure all sectors are represented and receiving the information and resources they need to get through this taxing time. We have worked hard not only to get your message heard with the government, but to make sure you are informed at all times. Our teams have been busy creating resources, sending information, and organizing calls like this to make sure we have all the facts you need to make protocol changes and business decisions on your farm. Visit our website for the latest news and any assistance and information you might need. We thank you all for your innovation, your willingness to adapt, and your quick responses to ever-changing situations. Please reach out to our industry representative and your NCFA or CCA board if you have any question or concern. We are here to work with you. Maintenant, vous me permettrez de dire un petit mot aux francophones. Alors, comme chairman de la NCFA, on travaille très fort, notre organisation. On met tout en œuvre pour travailler en étroite collaboration avec des organisations d'éleveurs comme la CCA, des représentants des gouvernements et d'autres organisations tant nationales que provinciales, ainsi que plusieurs partenaires de l'industrie comme le Conseil des viandes et énumérer les. Notre objectif premier est de continuer d'offrir un approvisionnement suffisant en produits de viande bovine de qualité et de façon sécuritaire. Dans quelques minutes, Janice, la présidente de la NCFA, va vous entretenir davantage de nos champs d'action. Nous mettons beaucoup d'efforts pour mettre en place avec les gouvernements des mesures qui permettent de maintenir les capacités d'abattage, tant dans l'Est que dans l'Ouest du pays, de solutionner les problèmes de main-d'œuvre, d'adapter les programmes de gestion du risque pour les éleveurs qui font face à des bas prix de façon très dramatique dans les dernières semaines. Je tiens à remercier les éleveurs pour leur extraordinaire capacité d'adaptation, leur résilience. N'hésitez pas à contacter vos représentants d'association en cas de besoin. Je suis disponible pour la période de questions qui va suivre un peu plus tard. Alors, à vous, Michel.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Bob, for your remarks. Tonight, we will receive updates from Dennis Laycraft, Executive Vice President of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, Janice Tranberg, President of the National Cattle Feeders Association, and Brian Perlick, Manager and Senior Analyst with CanFax. Following these updates, we will open the floor up to questions from producers. We will limit the duration of this entire presentation to 1 hour. Please submit questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please also include your full name with your question. I'll now give the floor to Dennis, Janice, and Brian. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. First of all, to everyone who's joined us tonight, we're really pleased that you've taken part in this. A special note to our producers on the East Coast. It's getting late down there, but we appreciate the fact you've come on and certainly value your participation. We go back to where Bob started a month ago on March 15th. We activated our crisis management plan, and this is a plan that has been in there for a while. It was part of our national beef strategy, and as part of that, 3 mornings a week, we have all the leadership of our national organizations and service groups that are working together, taking a look at what the current situation is, looking at solutions for the industry, and making sure as we move forward that we're trying to deal with every aspect of this evolving pandemic and the impact that it's having on our industry. Our first priority as we activated that group was to take a look at business continuity. And as Bob mentioned, we're into bull sale season. We needed to make sure the auction markets were continuing to operate. We saw from 50 down to 25 to pretty well a complete ban on all gatherings that weren't considered essential. And you worked on protocols for all aspects of that, including employee protocols. And as Bob mentioned, if you go to cattle.ca and go to the COVID site, there's information on all of those things, as well as other things that are happening around this. We work very hard to make sure, first of all, that agri-food and the cattle industry are included in the essential service designation. And then secondly, as that was done province by province, that was done consistently and adequately covered all of the services that we need to be able to maintain our business. We are continuing to monitor and ask you, as you move forward here, if there are any shortages in your essential supplies. We have set up a weekly process to try and identify those and make sure that we can try and secure those and at least alert the federal government where shortages are occurring and make it a priority in their essential service discussions. We put a lot of energy very quickly into the protocols with our regulators, particularly focused on all of our packing plants, but with the focus on capacity across the country. There was a fair bit of work that went into getting those workable protocols established, so that now, and we have had COVID-19 cases in 3 of our plants, they've made major modifications. And if you, contrary to what some of the reports might be in the media, I can tell you, having worked with them, they've gone to extraordinary measures to ensure the safety of their workforce. You know, in one plant, I know they've put in 450 dividers between workers to make sure that they're able to offer the most effective controls, and they're using masks, they're using visors, every precaution that you can. We're doing, and that certainly resonated with the regulators and people who are assessing the risk in plants, and that's very important to the continuity moving forward. That said, we're still seeing reductions in our large plants in particular. Some of this is driven by employees that are isolating. In some cases, there's more absenteeism. We're working closely with them, but we're already entering into that phase where we're starting to see a significant reduction in our processing. And very early on, we recognized the potential for that and began work on a number of programs. One in particular is having a look at the set-aside program that was used during the BSE when we were dealing with, we're building more capacity and trying to manage our herd until that capacity came online. In this case, it's obviously going to be more sporadic as we deal with these challenges and as we work on strategies. We are asking that get implemented right away with a fed cattle program, a feeder cattle program, and one targeted towards cull cows. Now, prior to all of this, if you were to go to Eastern Canada, their problems with capacity started ahead of COVID-19. We've been working on looking at set-asides and other measures down there as well, certainly with the Riding Regency plant being idled last September. And then as we went in, and the COVID-19 further contributing to the problem, and a number of US plants that they depend on being closed temporarily, their situation has gone from very serious to dire, and as some have described it, as desperate. So we're communicating that regularly, and obviously the situation across Canada now with the packing capacity really warrants immediate action as we work on a number of these tools that the industry needs. The other impact that we're seeing right away is clearly the type of programs, when they're needed most, is in a situation like this. And with the livestock price insurance program, with all of the extraordinary volatility in the market, and really they're not designed to deal with a pandemic environment, the cost of that coverage has gone up in some cases over 4 times, and really made the premiums out of reach. The coverage has gone down and the premiums have gone up substantially, some cases from around $15 all the way up to around $75. So we're working on a program to try and get those premiums back down to normal levels and have some backstopping and possibly sharing of those premiums so we can get it affordable, so the industry can have that tool available to it when it really needs it most. We've also been working on the cash advance program, looking at trying to increase the amount that's available, extend the term for that program, and increase the cap on that to $3 million, so it reaches out further and helps address more of the cash flow issues for the industry. Bob mentioned about working with other groups. We've been working with them on changes to the agri-stability program to address a number of things. The margins in it, dealing with the reference margin limit, and in eliminating the cap in that program so it can apply to our larger operations. Of particular importance, we're also looking at having COVID-19 deemed as a natural disaster. That'll frees up the ability for the provinces and the federal government to work together to use the agri-recovery program, which has a considerable amount of flexibility. And as we work through this, there are unique problems across the country. There are problems that vary by sector, and as Brian sort of goes through what have been the losses, that becomes clearer there. And again, we're constantly emphasizing how urgent it is that we get these programs announced. We're also liaising very closely with our counterparts in the United States. We're sharing information. They're interested in what we're doing on set aside. They're getting ready to announce some of their support measures down there, and we want to try and ensure that we're communicating, and obviously, the level playing field is extremely important as well. Well, that's a number of the things that we've been putting a lot of energy in. I really, want to emphasize, we've been pleased that our regulators are recognizing the essential nature of our industry. There's been a real effort to keep plants operating, and we're in daily contact with those operations, trying to move forward. We're in daily contact with a number of the operations in the United States as well, and we're committed to try and produce information on a regular basis to keep you up to date on what the capacity outlook is, and quickly have those other tools in place. So Michelle and Bob, I'll stop there, and we'll go on to the next panelist and look forward to your questions.
Great. Can you see me? It's a little dark here. Yeah, as well, I want to say thanks so much to Michelle and the whole team for pulling this together. And it's a good opportunity to come and present. NCFA's been working quite collaboratively with the whole industry, right from the Cattlemen's Association, Canada Beef Breeds Council, the Canadian Livestock Market Association, and the Canadian Meats Council. And I'm probably forgetting someone, so sorry. But really, it's been great to be able to work closely with the whole entire value chain. We've also been working very closely with our directors and members. We want to hear their concerns and ensure that programs that we're developing actually take their concerns into consideration, along with the entire beef value chain. So our number one priority right from the start was to ensure that packing plants remain open and functioning, and that the entire beef value chain is able to function properly despite the challenges of COVID-19. We have regular discussions with all levels of government, not just to bring issues forward, but also solutions, as is evident by the joint ask to the changes on business risk management and the preparation of a set-aside program, as Dennis just detailed. So along with others in the sector, NCFA has been working to keep producers up to date with the most relevant information. We've been doing this through our social media channels. We have a dedicated page for COVID on our website. We've developed best management practices to mitigate risks on your farm, and having regular outreach to our directors and our members. But one area that we've been quite active on is issues around labor. So we do understand that a number of Canadians are currently looking for employment, and this might be a really great opportunity for agriculture to bring new people into the industry. But with current issues at our packing plants and with other aspects of the beef value chain, there is a need for labor immediately. Provincial governments are stepping up with job matching programs to match employers with potential employees. So that's been positive. And as well, the federal government just recently announced a student job program where Canadians between the age of 15 and 30 can be hired for summer employment with 100% wage recovery. So that is something that I think people might be interested in. But there is also a need for employees who are skilled and can be readily employed. A lot of these people enter Canada through the Temporary Foreign Workers Program. So while we can work to train and employ Canadians, there is a need for foreign labor that's skilled. And with spring seeding right around the corner and Mother Nature not cooperating very well, when the weather finally does turn, we need to be ready to go as fast as possible. And as well, with packing plants losing employees due to sickness, there really is an immediate need for skilled employees. Agriculture and agri-food hires about 50 to 60,000 foreign workers annually. And despite the fact that we receive all these foreign workers, still around 15,000 jobs remain vacant. So there is room for both Canadians and temporary foreign workers. Just a few weeks ago, the government announced that temporary foreign workers were exempt from travel bans. Of course, given that they don't show any signs of infection and they have to isolate for 14 days immediately upon arrival. So the details of all these requirements for employers are on the government website, and NCFA has put together a summary of some pertinent questions and answers on this topic, and that's available on our website. So employers are responsible, though, to pay workers for the 2 weeks of the mandatory isolation as they cannot work at that time. And then in addition, employers are responsible for providing transportation, accommodations, access to food, basic supplies, all the things that they'll need to meet the conditions imposed by the public health authorities. So to help with these additional costs, the government has just announced $50 million for farmers, fish harvesters, and all food production and processing employers to put in place the measures that are necessary to follow this 14-day isolation period. So with this announcement, the federal government will provide support to employers of $1,500 for each temporary foreign worker to ensure that all these requirements are met. So how is the process going? There are still a lot of issues actually getting foreign workers into Canada due to closures of airports and commercial flights at source countries. But we have heard that temporary foreign workers are starting to safely enter Canada. There are currently around 11,000 foreign workers in Canada. About 2,000 have arrived in the last few weeks, and approximately 4,000 more are expected in the next few weeks. To conclude, before I end, I just did want to remind everybody that these really are stressful and trying times. And we want producers to know that you're not alone. You're not new to adversity, but generally there's a community around you that you can lean on in tough times. So we want to remind you to reach out. There's all the member associations here. There's provincial helplines, and there's also associations like Do More Ag. So make sure you reach out if you're needing it. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to Brian.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Not sure if am I on the screen, or if not, maybe that's just as well.
There you go.
Okay, hello. So this evening, I guess we're with the time we have here, I'll just try and provide a market update. We certainly have a lot going on. I definitely been challenging markets for the producers. Volatility and uncertainty remains incredibly high. And obviously, the uncertainty is what drives this volatility in these kinds of markets. And as of late, you know, when we have these challenges with the packing plants and production levels, certainly comes back to producers. We need to keep in mind coming into 2020, we were fairly optimistic about this year. Well, there's large meat supplies. We're talking record meat production across North America. We really needed a supply chain that was functioning on all levels, firing on all cylinders, and unfortunately it's been anything but that. And just going to kind of cover what this has come back to us and as to the producers across the country. Certainly, been some adjustments to the supply chain, moving from, half to 50% food service, 50% retail, to basically the bulk of beef now being moved through the retail channels, and certainly some adjustments there in terms of the types of meat and products. Certainly overall demand has remained fairly well. Consumers need to eat. Beef has been moving off retail shelves well. Certainly strong demand for grinding meat, ground beef, and certainly seen any kind of end meats and end primals, very strong prices. But an important part to the beef industry is our middle meats, our high value cuts, and that certainly does get hit, with the loss of the restaurant sector and restaurant business. So that part of it is a challenge. Hopefully, as we move into grilling season, consumers will be enticed. Hopefully, some of the middle meats, looking at reasonable prices and consumption levels there. But again, wholesale prices remain quite high, which I know is a bit frustrating sometimes for producers to see the high wholesale beef prices and the challenging cattle prices. But realistically, these cattle markets are being run off of the productivity challenges or capacity constraints of the packing sector. When you've got a lot of extra cattle that are realistically don't have a home at the moment on the market, it's going to come back to poor prices. So certainly some of these programs discussed go a long ways in hopefully leveling that playing field and getting prices back to consumers, getting more level fair playing field through consumers to packers to producers. If we look at what's gone on the last few weeks, Canada, we were slaughtering about 2% more cattle through to the end of March. And, in the last week or so, we've seen production levels drop to almost half of what they were a year ago. So obviously some cattle or concern out there that cattle could start backing up, hopefully next week and again, that's kind of always tough talking about hopefully, but we can see a little bit of a pickup in the slaughter as these plants adjust and accommodate the new systems within their plants. U.S. slaughter, same thing. Obviously, they've increased their cattle slaughter significantly. They were up 4% this year, and over the last few years, they've seen large growth. But again, same situation down there. Beef slaughter this week is estimated to be 22% below a year ago. So again, not working through the cattle in a timely manner right now either. And that impacts us with these U.S. plants. Some of them in Eastern Canada, the Sauderton JBS plant that was closed, that was one of the outlets for Eastern Canadian cows, especially some fed cattle. So it was a bit of a double whammy to the Eastern Canadian market. Hopefully they come back and are running, but it's going to take them some time to get active on the Canadian market. Out west, obviously, with the Cargill slowdown and JBS slowing down, the outlets into Pasco, into Washington, they're dealing with COVID issues as well. And the large Greeley plant in Colorado, which is closed. We don't ship cattle there directly, but obviously that takes away the outlet for Canadian fed cattle, which is usually, where we get market arbitrage. So we're struggling right now on getting cattle processed. So on a pricing system, obviously challenging this week, quite disappointing, but packers are focusing on just trying to get back up and running and killing at decent rates. So they've stepped off, in some instances, off the slaughter market. Fed prices down this week, almost $17 a hundredweight. We've lost probably about $30 a hundredweight from where we were 3 weeks ago. So we're $400, $500 ahead on that side of things. So certainly challenging and definitely want to get some stability into this market, both through throughput and some confidence in producers. Eastern Canada, Ontario, their prices have been struggling for most of the winter, with basically, you have more cattle or not enough, or you have too many cattle or not enough packing capacity, either way you want to look at it. But their prices have held relatively steady this winter. They're currently around $140 live weight basis. But again, when you have break evens into the 160s, it's certainly it's a challenging with these kind of losses at the feedlot level. And ultimately, you know, with this kind of pressure on the market and uncertainty, again, feedlots are not going to be in a big appetite for the feeder market. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, many people that have background in cattle are selling cattle. You know, it's kind of tough to buy calves, feed them all winter and sell them later on. But for basically what you paid, and understandably, but again, feedlots with these kind of losses and not moving cattle, it's tough for placement. So feeder cattle into the 150s, 850-pound steers, for example. The one little bright spot, I think, kind of speaks to maybe the positivity or the potential outlook further on, you know, once we get through sort of these constraints through packing and processing, that, there will be stronger demand down the road and can realign supplies and demand from packing plants later in the year. But calf prices, grass cattle, still relatively strong. So if there's panic in the market or uncertainty, you can still move those cattle at reasonably good prices, well over $2 a pound anyways on 5 and 6 weight steers. Slightly below a year ago, but overall it's still a market there with some value in it. Obviously, with these plants challenged on capacity, for the most part, they're focusing on some of their fed cattle kills, so backing off on cows. We're seeing cows back down to 60 cents again. Again, it's been almost a decade since we've been to those kind of price levels. But I guess, we are seeing a little bit of a floor on cows, with cows going to the United States. So at least out of the West, until Solderton gets running in the East, it'll be slow there. But we haven't seen that for about 4 years, as we've had a very strong cow market. So at least we're getting a little bit of arbitrage on cows with challenges from the dairy sector and such. Hopefully some guys can carry cows. It's maybe one of those times where there's value in the cows, and down the road when the market improves, it might be worth carrying those cows. So in terms of, again, as I mentioned, prices, haven't seen this since prior to the run-up back in 2012, 2013. But we've got a lot of cattle to work through up front. These supplies were large for the next 2, 3, 4 months. Just unfortunate a little bit on the timing here, but hopefully there's a little reprieve between calves once the fed calves come onto the market in more probably June, July, hopefully. And again, always tough as a market analyst to talk about hopefully, but if we can have some more movement and packing capacity throughput at that time, will be even more critical there. On a broader market, so I guess that's the current market situation. It's pretty tough to get too specific on any outlooks on that side of things. On the broader market, some of the implications of this is we may see some pullbacks in production. Certainly seeing, sow slaughter in the U.S. has gone up. Everybody geared up big beef production for domestic demand and exports. But, it just hasn't come to fruition, or producers are getting hit with the bottlenecks in the packing sector. So, even to eggs and chicken production expected to be down quite a bit later this year. The U.S. cow herd had started, they had a pretty massive, a large expansion in the last 3 to 4 years. They have pulled back in cow numbers already. This might cause a little bit more of that, or maybe a little bit of a shrinking cow herd down there, and maybe provide some opportunity to see some tightening of supplies down the line, which again was supposed to be supportive for the beef industry in 2020 as the U.S. herd quit expanding. Kind of the forgotten about topics these days is feed grains and the Canadian dollar. They certainly, U.S. looking at huge corn crops, corn prices down there struggling significantly. Again, from the feeder calf market, again, it's being outweighed by far by the cattle market fluctuations, but there is a little bit of positive news there, and the weaker Canadian dollar obviously has a big impact on us too. So we can get some recovery in the cattle markets through the supply chains running. There's some sides there. Western Canada, we're at a large feeding cost disadvantage. So we have a lot of cattle on feed, but we may start to see more cattle being exported. And we've been importing a lot of feeders, so that may slow down. So a bit of a double-edged sword. We've done successfully growing our feeding industry and packing industry here in Canada. It's been very competitive. But hopefully some of these realignments in supplies can give the producers a little more share of the dollar that's out there. Ultimately, beef's a high, it's more of a luxury kind of the proteins. It's the higher end protein, stronger demand, higher priced. And, we really got to watch what the length of how long COVID would last and what the real impact will be on demand. There's always challenges when you get into recessions. Beef demand does struggle. So we may have a little bit of a realignment in our price expectations there. Not to say that, the producers get a bigger piece of the pie. But again, the demand side is going to be a challenge, and export markets still look like some good opportunities out there for value to export meat, export beef, especially. Been some opening into Asia has been a strong market. It certainly had been prior to all this COVID the issues we're dealing with here. So again, keep your eye out. Volatility's been high. It's been negative for the most part. It's been down. We've seen a little bit of a pickup, but things like price insurance, when you're into these markets, we've certainly looked at the premiums. Coverage has not been good. The market hasn't really been, has been under a lot of pressure. A lot of the negativity is priced into the market here, but, keep your eyes out on price insurance. Calf price insurance, again, some spots over $2 a pound. You can cover on roughly a 6-weight steer. It's not terrible, but it gives you some protection. It's costly, but it can move 4-8 cents in a week. So keep your eyes out on that. May not be a bad investment to buy a little bit at some point. And finally, we look at these markets. We were kind of through a cattle cycle the last few years with the U.S. expansion, expecting to peak. Some pressure on prices. Certainly never expected this kind of a hit to the cattle industry and cattle prices. Maybe going against the grain. This is more just a thought, not a prediction or anything like that. But sometimes, everybody's going one way against the market, going the opposite direction isn't all bad. And sometimes you look at some of these very cheap heifers, and at this point of the cycle, sometimes these cheaper heifers turn into very profitable cows on cattle operations. So just other frames of thought. But I guess for general market update, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Brian and Janice and Dennis, for your updates. We will, before we open the floor to some questions, I just want to let everybody on today's session know that we also have representatives available to take questions from some industry associations as well as CCA staff. So we have Michael Latimer from the Canadian Beef Breeds Council. We have Ron Glazer from Canada Beef. And we also have Fawn Jackson, Brady Stednicki, and David Moss from CCA to answer any questions that may arise. We will start the first round of questioning and would ask each participant to submit just one question. Please include your name and province with your question. We will, so I will now read the first question. That is from James Hosberg, and I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's last name. I have bought feeder cattle in the fall and have been feeding them. The cattle that I haven't sold are now worth less than what I paid for them. Meanwhile, the packers have been selling beef at top dollar. How can we bring this market back to order?
I guess, Brian here, I can take a first little stab at that. Obviously, as I mentioned, the packing capacity and throughput is an issue. It's hard to get top dollar for your cattle when there's not a place for them to get processed, unfortunately. I think some of the proposals, like the set-aside program, is a big part of it. Efficiencies through the supply chain, through packing plants, to process and get cattle moving is key. And, a lot of these interventions with COVID, it certainly slows that down. And simple answer is, we've got a lot of cattle. We've put a lot more cattle into North America in the last 3-4 years, and we haven't expanded packing capacity very much. it's going to take some time. And Eastern Canada, ultimately you're going to need more packing capacity or potentially a slight pullback in cattle numbers. And cattle industry is slow to adjust to production levels, but I think across North America we may see cattle numbers tighten, and I do suspect that will help producers get a little bit more of the pie.
Thanks, Brian, for that. Our next question is from Hillary Baker. Could you share what wage subsidy programs might be available for TFW and seasonal workers?
So I can maybe take a quick stab at this one. As I already mentioned, that 50 million, which gives 1,500 per worker, per seasonal worker that you bring in related to isolation. But there are other things. I mean, as long as temporary foreign workers, ones that have already been in Canada or are returning to Canada, if they've already been paying into their unemployment insurance premiums, then they do have access to a number of other programs. We know that they have access to the Canadian emergency response benefit. So that's if for whatever reason you're downsizing and you need to lay them off, they are that is available for them. That's obviously, we don't want to see that, but I mean, that is available. As well, for employers, there is the 75% wage subsidy. So this comes under the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy. You have to show that you've had a decrease in profitability of 30%, or in the month of March it's 15%. But basically you have to show this month compared to the same month last year that you've had a loss. And if you're able to show that, then you can apply for the 75% wage subsidy. So that's another one. And then finally, I mean, some people this might be applicable to some, but not to everybody. But if you've made between 50,000 and $1 million, if that's what you pay in wages, then you may be able to get this Canadian Business Emergency account, and basically that's up to $40,000. Of interest-free loans. It's run through your bank, so you can get that. It's interest-free until the end of December 2000. I think December 31, 2021. And if you pay it back before then, it's you can have 25% forgivable, and then if not, then it's a 5% interest. So I mean, there are a number of options that are out there for businesses, we've actually got a little bit of a summary of that put together that we were hoping to have out either today or tomorrow, so we can certainly make sure that everybody has access to that.
Thanks, Janice. We have our next question is from Ken McGilvery. What impact does the issues at meat processing plants have on supply backlogs and in turn prices?
It's Brian here. I guess that question came in earlier. Hopefully I covered a portion or a good chunk of that with my presentation. Obviously, if you can't get cattle moved, it's hard to put a value on them, and it becomes a little bit of a fight for hook space. So, hence the big reduction in prices that we've seen in fed cattle. As I said, we're down $30 per hundredweight from where we were a few weeks ago. Very much big portion of that is due to the lack of packing capacity.
Michelle, I may add a few comments on that. We've been trying to monitor what the impact is back on the industry. Obviously, the first priority is to keep them operating at as high a capacity as possible, and maintaining workers' safety. This week has turned into an issue where that is really starting to impact on backing up cattle in the West. As I mentioned, there's been ongoing challenges in the East. this week as a result of fewer employees being available. For instance, Cargill has gone down to 1 shift. Now, there's some questions I've seen through the list here about, what's happening at Cargill. We've been talking to them every day, and their whole cooler was full of carcasses. This week, they've had to concentrate with their workforce that they do have on cleaning those coolers out, fabbing all of that beef. They're working their way through that with fewer employees than they'd hoped, but they're hopefully getting more coming back. As they work through that, their message to us is they intend to start getting back to slaughter or harvesting cattle next week. Following that, after the 2 weeks, the following Monday, if they can get sufficient workforce back, they do want to see if they can get both shifts up and running again. So that's their priority. Likewise, we've seen some reduction in Brooks here just very recently. They look like they're going to be processing under 3,000 here. It's sort of a day-to-day situation for our plants, really driven by the attendance of and what employees are available. So back to Janice's earlier comments, again, making sure we have the workforce available and the recognition that they need to get as essential workers. I have to say the work that's gone in and I'll just talk about Alberta, but it's every province. The provincial health services are involved in this. The Alberta Health Services had certainly through leadership at the very head of CFIA, they've developed workable solutions so that as we're working our way through this, we're keeping plant inspection going. These plants are remaining open because of all of the measures that they've undertaken. But the real question is, as we move forward, are they, how many workers are going to be available? And as that gets resolved, then every one of them have the intent of trying to get up to a higher capacity. One thing that we are trying to do is set up a measurement in the US and Canada. What has been the impact each week on our weekly kill? And you need that information as we start to look at trying to implement set-aside programs so we can slow down, cattle at various stages of production until we get, some hope. I'm not sure there's going to be new normal, but under the new normal, some normalization in the plants, and all the measures they're putting in place are designed to provide worker safety and still try and maintain an efficient level of production there.
Thanks, Dennis and Brian, for your responses. The next question that we have is from Adrienne Ivy. The best way to keep processing facilities working consistently is daily testing of workers. Have the facility management asked for this, and how can we as an industry help them achieve it for all of our benefit?
I might jump in on that one again. We're actually having a conversation today as we're, again, talking to the plants, and we are finally starting to see some availability of, more rapid tests that are some of the new ones, they're just coming into production, trying to procure them where you can have a result back in half an hour. Right now, most of them are an hour. If you go to the normal testing, you're talking days before you get a result. But, we're certainly having that discussion and looking at, what a whole range of tools that could be available to do this, and recognizing that this is probably not a problem that's done in 3 weeks. In fact, we all know that. Anyone who's making suggestions, you just close down a plant for 14 days, and then that's going to fix the problem and start it up again. I don't know who they've been listening to. This is going to be an ongoing problem, and obviously, where we can ensure worker safety, we can ensure. And I can tell you, the most sterile environment that you're going to find almost anywhere right now are in these large packing plants with all the measures that they've taken. We'll work with them and see whether that option or other options can help with their business continuity.
I could maybe add too that we've heard that Alberta Health Services is setting up a testing site at the Cargill plant. So a lot of these things are already happening.
If, Michelle, I can add something for eastern part of the country. You know,
course.
you have a lot of bad news out west, but we have some good news out east, you know. I understood that Cargill plant in Guelph look to increase its killing capacity by 15%. So it's really good news. And the other good news for eastern part of North America is the JBS plant in Southerton is supposed to reopen on April 20 and start killing at 50% capacity for the first days. So on all those bad news, there are still some good news.
Thanks for your responses. The next question comes from Jesse Williams. In relation to the federal programs, LPIP and set-aside program, what do you consider right away?
Bob, if you want to answer that.
I would say the most immediate thing that we'll possibly need is a set-aside program. We don't need it yet, but it's getting really, really close. That'd be the most immediate. Longer term would be you're fixing the price insurance program, and actually the other one we're working at is the advanced payments program. But they'd be a little longer. The immediate thing will probably be the set aside.
Thanks for that, Bob. Our next one is from Kelsey Elford. Dennis, when I read the proposed set-aside program details, it states that producers have to be enrolled in egg stability. This is a program that has had a mass exodus from, because frankly, it hasn't been effective for cattlemen. Will that stipulation be lifted so all sectors have a fair opportunity to the set-aside funds if implemented? Kelsey.
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, I've raised that same question myself. You know, previously there was some cross-compliance in the program, but I think that definitely has to be on the table for discussion. And, you know, agree, there have been issues, which are why we're recommending some major changes to agri-stability. And also with agri-stability, allowing, you know, to backdate and when you could enter into that program. But I must admit, I'm not a big fan of cross-compliance and these type of programs. So it is still up for discussion.
Thanks, Dennis. Our next question is from Emily. Has there been any progress on reopening the Riding Regency plant?
I have had recent discussions with the previous ownership there. There was some interest from another investor. I understand that interest has backed off. There was a plan to get CFI to come in and look at the changes that they've made. So that was a little over a week ago, 10 days ago. I haven't heard anything since, but we'll try and look into that again. And if we hear anything more, try and get some information out on that.
Thanks, Dennis. Our next question is from Russell. What kind of programs are going to be released with the Agra recovery?
I guess I'm going to get that one as well. I know Brady is on and Dave. Agri recovery has a lot more flexibility in it, and it's been used for a variety of disasters over the last number of years, everything from flooding to fires, even to enhance some of the compensation related to additional costs when the tuberculosis control programs were being in place in Eastern Alberta. I think the key thing with it tends to be administered provincially, and there is some flexibility in sitting down and trying to figure out what would be the most appropriate solution. So that is one of, I think, the strengths is we can take a look and see, you know, as different conditions warrant, what would be the most effective thing province by province to supplement what's being done, hopefully with, you know, the national programs. And one thing I wanted to add we've talked about the livestock price insurance. One of our top priorities is to make sure we get it available to the 3 maritime provinces who have been working on this for years. And I think we're very close to where we also want that available. One of the critical things with it now is to look at how do we get the premiums down to an affordable level so it makes sense to use it. And that's really going to require some backstopping of those premiums in order to get that there. If it gets down to an affordable level and the level of coverage that Brian was talking about, I think it's going to become a very attractive program to many producers.
And I just wanted to quickly add, I think it's an obvious statement, but I just did want to provide clarity that, these are proposals we're taking to the government. Obviously, they have the decision in the end, and that's, so we're just trying to make sure that, all perspectives are being brought forward and that we're creating a program that's desirable for producers to use, but also one that government could actually pick up. So we'll do everything we can to push that forward, but in the end, we're still waiting upon them to make the decision.
Thanks, Janice. I'm looking at the time and we have reached 8 o'clock. So we're going to take 3 more questions, and there has been a tremendous response in terms of questions. So thank you for that. For the producers who have asked questions, if we're unable to get to your question, we will capture your question and we will email you following the town hall, most likely tomorrow, with a response. So thank you so much for your interest in tonight's meeting. So our next question is from Layton. What is the government's view today in regards to set aside, egg stability, raising the limits, and dealing with reference margin? We need to have a positive message and concrete solutions to help financial institutions from panicking and causing long-term damage to the cattle value chain, pulling back on credit.
Michelle,
yes, I could.
See if Fawn could answer that.
Yeah, sure. So we've been in discussion with the federal government as well as through the provinces with the provincial governments right from the start of COVID-19. And I think what we heard, first of all, is that they wanted to do umbrella programs for multiple industries. And then once they had those rolled out, then they wanted to focus in on specific industries such as agriculture. And certainly the messaging that we've heard is that they would like to invest through the existing frameworks that there are, understanding that some sectors of agriculture have specific needs, particularly protein, who is facing a number of challenges right now, whether you're in pork or beef or chicken or dairy. Certainly we've been communicating that that maybe it might fit under some agri-recovery funding, but really we think that there needs to be a specific investment in some of the tools that we're asking for. I think there's generally recognition that there's a problem, but it's not been acted on perhaps as quickly as we would like to see. So we'll continue to have those conversations over the last, 2 weeks now. We've been having what we're calling virtual fly-ins, where we're meeting over a video conferencing tool with a number of members of parliament to discuss our concerns and the importance of urgent action. I think the key that message we've been delivering is that quick action will result in fewer repercussions economically speaking, and able to get the agriculture engine up and running quicker. So I don't have a great answer for you, or perhaps not one that we all want to hear. But I do think that over the last week, when we were visiting with Minister Bibeau and with government officials, there's been a lot more questioning about, okay, what are the details? And so hopefully we're headed in the right direction. But I do think that any communication that you might have with your elected MLA or MPP or member of parliament would highlight the messages that we're delivering to, and that this is important to do now.
And maybe I'll add a couple of comments. Certainly we've seen even since Sunday that they're beginning to recognize that there's more urgency in this. And when we went through some of the issues with BSE, it actually took a couple of provinces to step up and take some lead to do that. So we've been working very closely with our provincial members and reaching out to the provinces as well. You always come back to the federal provincial relationship on these programs. And, you know, Bob recognized Senator Black. He's done a great job of bringing forward the message on the urgency on this. So, you know, obviously things changed a lot over the weekend, and as we're seeing the reductions in slaughter, everything we told them could start to happen is happening. And, you know, again, we're emphasizing the absolute urgency that the sooner you get these announced, the sooner we have tools available to producers to make good decisions, or the best decisions they can under the circumstances we're dealing with. So we're going to push on that, and you know, all of the provincial associations are really pushing on that as well. So we're going to keep leaning into this very hard.
Thanks for your responses. Our next question is from Ron. With limits on federal approved processing capacity, are there any initiatives in place to boost provincially inspected packing plant capacity?
I guess yeah, go ahead, Fawn. I was going to say I could answer that.
Yeah, sure. So I think, you know, what we've been communicating is that all options are on the table, and every little bit helps in these types of scenarios. So, you know, we've been reaching out through the provinces again to identify if there are solutions, you know, whether it's cooler capacity or what might be limits at their ends to see if we can help. So certainly all options are on the table at this time to see how we can make it through these hard times.
One thing that has been happening in Alberta is that provincial inspectors are now getting are getting trained so that they can go in and help in the federally inspected plants. So that is an initiative that's up and running in Alberta.
Thank you, Janice and Fawn. Our last question is from Andrea. Are any producers taking advantage of the federal wage subsidy program for family members who work in business but are not business owners?
Well, a lot of these programs quite literally just got announced. Like, they've been announced a little while ago, but the application forms are just coming online. So I'm not really sure I can answer that at this time. But we will, like I said, make sure to get some of these programs outlined so that people can take advantage of them where possible.
Thanks for that, Janice. Thank you everyone for all of your questions tonight. I know that we have a number of questions that are still unanswered, but we will get back to you with responses to all of your questions. Before we close tonight's meeting, I'd like to open the floor to our panelists for closing remarks.
I'll lead off with that if it's okay, Michelle.
Oh, yes, of course. Please do, Bob.
A couple of points. One that Janice brought up that people should understand. We can put all this stuff forward, but it's up to government to actually implement it. So, you know, we would ask that everybody talk to their MPs or MLAs. It's really crucial that they realize how fast this thing's moving and how fast they have to move to keep up and get ahead of it, hopefully. So if everybody could talk to their members of parliament and MLAs, that would be a good thing. I had something else, but it's gone, so I guess it doesn't matter. Thanks everybody for coming. I hope that it was a worthwhile thing. We'll try and have more of them.
Maybe I'll just quickly chime in really fast, just simply to say that, you know, the situation changes almost hourly sometimes, certainly daily and weekly. We're working hard to keep on top of things, but any suggestions that you have or any input, please feel free to bring it forward. And I just would like to echo that the collaboration across the industry really has been working well, and it's really been appreciated. So we're working hard on your behalf. Let us know what we can do.
Yeah, and maybe just a couple of quick comments. This is the first time we've tried this type of format. So obviously, you learn each time you do something like this, but we appreciate everybody joining in, and really will welcome your feedback on it. I think, one thing I'm seeing, maybe next time we'll stay a little longer. One thing's for certain, we're not going anywhere. So, we certainly could be available next time. You have to book sort of the time available for this, but again, welcome your feedback, and hopefully we can do this more regularly to do our best to keep people as informed as we can and get your comments back.
Thanks, Dennis. Michelle, do you have any remarks that you'd like to say to close out in French or in English?
Oh, I was really happy to join you for this town hall tonight. I ask to everybody to be patient and resilient, and maybe good days are to be for the future, and stay happy on that.
Well, thank you everyone for joining tonight's town hall. As all the panelists said, we would really appreciate your feedback. So there will be a short survey when you exit tonight's meeting. We would ask that you complete the survey to provide us with important feedback to help us develop future town hall meetings. If you have any follow-up questions, or if you'd like a copy of the town hall, you can just email me at mcmullan@cattle.ca. We will be putting it on our website, and it will also be available through social media as well. So thank you everyone. Stay healthy. Merci et prenez soin de vous.